What's this? A flying squirrel with some mail for me. Oh, I love Christmas cards. You know, while we've been waiting for all my friends to show up, I've been working on my video Christmas cards. On my video Christmas cards, I like to remember the last year, everything that happened, and all the fun questions I've been answering about the Bible. Here, would you like to take a preview of my video Christmas cards? In Luke, we learn that an angel comes to tell Mary that she will have a baby and that God will give him the throne of David. Could this be the answer to the Davidic covenant? What's the Davidic covenant? Well, it has to do with the promise God made to King David.
Tell him about the promise.
What promise?
You mean the one about the land and the nation and the blessing for the world? The one God gave Abraham? Oh no, it's a new promise for David.
That's right, Brother Louis. God is so pleased with David that in chapter 7 of 2 Samuel, he makes David an amazing promise. God tells David that someone from his family, one of his descendants, will rule over God's people forever.
Whoa, that's a big promise.
It sure is. This promise is called the Davidic Covenant.
Davidic?
What kind of word is Davidic?
The word Davidic means about David, or having to do with David.
Oh, so if something was about Ian, it would be Ianic.
Well,
And if it was about Clive, it would be Clivic. Clivic, that's funny.
Hilarious.
this promise for David, or Davidic covenant, is so important that in the New Testament, when Matthew talks about God's rescue plan, he puts King David right in the middle.
Oh, God has a rescue plan and David's in the middle. But how he's gonna use him is kinda like a riddle. The books of the Old Testament, they each explain a little how God has a rescue plan and David's in the middle.
Oh, that can't be good.
I miss Captain Pete. I hope he gets to our party soon. Okay, so we learned in Luke that an angel tells Mary, the mother of Jesus, that her baby will reign over the house of Jacob. Who's Jacob? We'll have to take a look back in the book of Genesis and start with Abraham.
It's about 2000 BC, or 2,000 years before Jesus was born, and we're in the city of Ur, possibly the biggest city in the world at that time, which was in what is now southern Iraq. Have you heard of Iraq? Yes, it's been in the news. Anyway, that's where Abram lived.
Abram, who's he?
He's our first patriarch. There he was, minding his own business, when God launched his rescue plan by tapping Abram on the shoulder. Abram heard a voice say, "Leave your father's house and go to the land I will show you." Abram figured this voice was God and thought he better listen to him. So he and his wife Sarah left Ur and wandered off following God's voice. And so God's plan began.
That's how it starts. Two people wandering away from town.
Yep, an act of faith. That's always how God's plans start. Someone hears God's voice, they believe, and they follow. And God uses them to do amazing things. God had found a man who would listen to him, so he made Abram 3 promises. First, he said, "You will be the father of a great nation." Second, he said, "Through you, all the families of the earth will be blessed." Something very good would happen to the whole world because of Abram. Finally, God told Abram he would give his children their own land, the land of Canaan. They called it the Promised Land. To celebrate these big promises, God gave Abram a new name, Abraham, which means father of many. The new name was kind of ironic since Abraham and Sarah didn't have any kids at all. Abraham was 75 when God called him out of Ur, and he and Sarah had never been able to have kids.
So why would God pick someone to have kids who couldn't have kids?
Yeah, that doesn't make much sense.
Because God can do anything. And if someone who can't have kids has kids because God says he was going to have kids, all you can say is, "Hallelujah, look what God can do."
That's right. Sure enough, when Abraham was 100 years old, he and Sarah had a son named Isaac. And they couldn't say, look what we did, because they knew it wasn't them. It was God. So they said, hallelujah, look what God can do. Where's that music coming from? Brother Louie, is that you?
Hallelujah, look what God can do. Hallelujah, his promises come true. If God is who he says he is, then we can trust his promises. So, hallelujah, look what God can do.
By faith, Abraham left his home in Ur.
What's faith?
Faith is believing that God is who he says he is, and that he'll do what he says he'll do. God said Abraham would have a son even though his wife couldn't have kids, and he was crazy old. And Abraham believed God. He had faith, and God gave him a son. Now, our faith grows the most when it's tested. So God asked Abraham if he would give up his son.
Give up his son? Why would God want him to do that?
God didn't want Abraham to give up Isaac. He wanted him to be willing to give up Isaac. God wanted to know if Abraham trusted him more than anything. Wanted to know if he would let go of everything before he'd let go of God.
So, what happened? Did Isaac have to die?
I don't like this story.
Hold on. At the last minute, as Abraham was ready to sacrifice Isaac to give him up to God, God sent an angel to stop him. And then he provided a ram for the sacrifice to take Isaac's place. Now God knew that Abraham trusted him completely. And Abraham and Isaac's faith grew because they knew God would keep his promises always. And they cried out,
Hallelujah, look what God can do. Hallelujah, his promises come true. The evidence empirical says God can work a miracle. So, hallelujah, look what God can do.
Now Isaac lived by faith, just as his father had before him. He got married and had a son named Jacob. Jacob trusted God too, and God gave him a whole mess of sons. His favorite was Joseph.
Oh, I know about Joseph. He's the one with a fancy coat.
Right. His brothers didn't like it, though. They thought it was too flashy.
Well, actually, his brothers were jealous that their father loved Joseph the most. So they decided to get rid of Joseph once and for all by selling him.
What? They sold their brother? Who heard of such a thing?
Actually, I tried to sell you once when you were little.
What?
It was just to the neighbors. I got your back.
You sold me?
You were begging me. Let's not tell Mum about it, all right?
You sold me?
Ahem. Anywho, Joseph ended up in jail in Egypt, even though he hadn't done anything wrong. But God remembered his promises to Abraham, and he used Joseph to save Egypt from a famine. That means no food. And he became the right-hand man to Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Joseph was the second most powerful man in all of Egypt.
That's amazing.
God even used him to save his brothers and the rest of his family from the famine and bring them to live with him in Egypt. And his brothers were so amazed, all they could say was,
Hallelujah, look what God can do. Hallelujah, his promises come true. Things are bad, we have no food, but Joseph is a righteous dude. Hallelujah, look what God can do.
Look at what God can do? I think over the next few weeks we're going to hear a lot about what God can do through the birth of a very special baby.